Assalamu alaikum dear students. How are you? I hope you all are doing great. And also, I hope that you all are watching all the videos which is posted for you people, and obviously you will be enhancing your knowledge here. So, welcome back to my economics class. Let's begin the video as we are continuing from the chapter number 9, Fiscal Economics. In the previous video, you just learned about the public finance, that government manages the expenditure and revenue in the country. Have a look on the concepts which you are going to learn today from the video. The first concept will be public expenditure. It means you will learn this in detail, the meaning and the types or classification. And the second one is then there will be one important topic, that is the reason behind the increase in the public expenditure in India. I mean, first you will understand the meaning of public expenditure, then you will like to know that how and what are the basic reasons that the public expenditure is increasing in India. And the third one is meaning of public revenue. Start with the meaning of public expenditure. Public expenditure is spending made by the government of a country to satisfy those common wants which the people individually are unable to satisfy efficiently. I mean, in other words, we can say that such expenditures are made for the maintenance of the government as well as for the benefit of the society as a whole. It means the expenditure which the government incur in the society, in the public, in the country for the welfare. So first of all, we will move to the definition of public expenditure. Then later we will move to the examples that will clear the thing in your mind. So the definition of public expenditure is the expenditure incurred by public authorities like central, state and local governments to satisfy the collective social want of the people is known as public expenditure. For more clarification to you, there are some examples you can look after. The money actually spent by the government for the society. First one is the infrastructure. Like the government spent the money on construction of roads, dams, school buildings and hospital buildings. This is one of the example of public expenditure, like how the government spent the money on the country, in the form of building the school buildings, for the hospitals, they spending the money. The next example here I present is pension. The money which is given to the old age people, most important for their welfare, because they can't able to earn money at that stage. That's why the government is giving them the pension so that they can survive, so that they can complete their necessities. And most important, the money is spent on the defense weapons, as it is important for the protection of the country. And the money spent on the government hospital and school education are also covered under public expenditure. Topic here is the classification, or you can say the types of public expenditure. I mean, there are 3 points for classification. The first one is capital and revenue expenditure. The second one is developmental and non-developmental expenditure. Third one is planned and non-planned expenditure. I'll explain you one by one the points here. So the first point here is capital and revenue expenditure. I'll explain you first the capital expenditure, what it means actually. So capital expenditure, as the union government defines capital expenditure as the money spent on the acquisition or purchasing or creating of assets like land, building, machinery, equipment, as well as investment in shares. Moreover, capital expenditure is the part of government spending that goes in the creation of assets like schools, colleges, hospitals, roads, dams, etc. So basically, when the amount is spent on a huge projects for the long-term purposes is known as capital expenditure. You can relate that with the long-term and with the current situation. I mean, in this case, the government is not getting the profit immediately. I mean, they are spending the money on the huge projects. It means it will take a lot of time to complete as well. So they will need a time for creating the profit. So this is known as capital expenditure, which creates the assets in the country. Now we will move to the point that is the revenue expenditure, and it would be obviously the opposite for the capital expenditure here. So the revenue expenditure is that part of the government expenditure that does not result in the creation of asset. Payment of salaries, wages, pensions, subsidies, and interest fall in these categories as revenue expenditure. The union government explains the revenue expenditure comprises money spent on revenue account. The amount spent on running its elaborate machinery. Like in India, the payment of subsidies is also included in revenue expenditure. The central government pays subsidies under three major heads: food subsidy, which you receive in the public distribution system, and fertilizer subsidies, which is given to the farmers, and fuel subsidy, as you people are getting the subsidy for LPGs at your home. So this is the kind of expenditure which government is incurring for the public and for the current scenario. I mean, for the current time, they are making the payment for the public. So let's move to the next point. That is developmental and non-developmental expenditure. So developmental expenditure refers to the expenditure of the government which helps in economic development by increasing production and real income of the country. Some people also call its productive expenditure because it helps in increasing production and productivity of the economy. So basically, from the name itself, you can understand that those expenditure which is spent on the country by the government of the country for the developmental purposes. I mean, the money which is spent for development of the country is known as developmental expenditure. Obviously, it will help in the growth of the country. So next one is non-developmental expenditure. Non-developmental expenditure refers to those expenditure of the government which does not directly help in economic development of the country. As the name itself explaining here that the expenditure which is incurred by the government is not for the development of the country, but actually it have to be spent by the government, like the cost of tax collection, cost of audit and expenditure on defense, on pensions. I mean, the money which is given by the government to the old people, to the old age person in the form of pension. I mean, they are giving the pensions for the society, for the welfare of the society, but in return, the country is not getting anything. As well as the defense also. If we talk about defense, we are spending a lot of money on the defense weapons, but obviously it is important for the country to protect. But still, it's not creating any, wealth for the country. So that's why it comes under the non-developmental expenditure. So in short, you can say that expenditure which do not give any output or productivity to the country. It is simply for the social welfare of the country. Let's move to the next point. That is planned and non-planned expenditure. Planned expenditure means that expenditure which is incurred on programs which are detailed under the current 5-year plan of by the center. In other words, a planned expenditure is that public expenditure which represent current development and investment outlays that arises due to proposal in the current plan. So basically, you have heard about the government budget, the union budget. They include a lot of things in that budget, and whichever is included in the budget is known as planned expenditure. So it's always planned by the government for which they have to spend on different projects. On the other hand, there is non-planned expenditure, and non-planned expenditure is all expenditure other than planned expenditure of government. Such expenditure are must for every country. I mean, we are saying that it's not included in the budget or it's not planned, but still it is necessary for every country to spend that money on the projects. I mean, no government can escape from its basic function of protecting the lives and property of the people and protecting the country as well. For this, government has to spend on police, judiciary, etc. And also it's spent on smooth running of government department. So the money which is spent for the smooth running of the country is come under the non-planned expenditure, which is not mentioned in the 5-year plan of the country, but still it is required for every country to spend on the public, on the country, for the welfare, obviously for the society welfare. So the next concept, which is very important, what are the reasons, what are the causes for increase in the public expenditure? I mean, just now you have learnt about the public expenditure, which means the money is spent by the government on the public for their welfare, for the development of the country. But still there are a few reasons in our country that why this public expenditure is increasing a lot in our country. So it would be interesting for you people to understand this concept clearly. So let's have a look on the points first. That is, first point is developmental programs, which is run by the government for the development of the country. It's one of the reason for increase in the public expenditure. And the second one is growing trend of urbanization. We'll explain one by one. The third one is rise in price level, increase in population, welfare state, defense expenditure, debt servicing, government subsidies. So here we come with the first point, that is development programs. Setting up key and basic industries covered under this program. I mean, this program for the development of the country, the government have to think about opening the industries for industrialization. But this thing actually need huge capital, and obviously the profit may arise only in the long run. India needs a strong network of infrastructure, including the transport, communication, etc. And it's obvious that government has improved a lot in infrastructure, which is helping in the development of the country. And also it is one of the main reason why there is increase in the public expenditure. Like, if we people want the development of the country, then the government have to spend a lot of money on the industrialization, on the rural development. And even the Prime Minister of India also introduced Skill India, which is mentioning to improve the skills of our country's people. So these all projects of development requires a huge amount of fund, which is obviously becoming a very important reason for increase in the public expenditure. So let's move to the another reason. That is growing trend of urbanization. Urbanization means when people are moving to the cities for the development. I mean, the pressure here coming to the new big cities, the rural area, people are moving to urban areas. There has been an increase in urbanization, obviously, Now the urban population has increased to about 43%. There are more than 54 cities above 1 million population. And obviously, if there is an increase in the urbanization, it requires a heavy expenditure on law, order, education. So basically, when the people are moving from rural area to the urban area, it means the big city requires huge fund for that people also. So it is also becoming a reason for the increase in the public expenditure in our country. So the next, which is very important for us to understand, that if there is a rise in the price level, it would obviously affect on the public expenditure as well. And you would now think that how it can be possible that if there is a rise in the prices, how it affects on the public expenditure, how the government is affected by this point. So let me explain you. As a result of this rise in the price level, the public expenditure has gone up everywhere. Why? Why? The question arises here. The reason is that, like the private industries, the government also has to buy goods and services from the market at higher prices. Now there is one question arises here also, that why the government have to buy the goods and services from the market at the high level prices, because it have to spend in the public distribution system. Like in the public distribution system, the government is giving the goods to the public at the lower rate. They are not earning any profit here. The government, especially the government, is not earning any profit, but they have to give goods in the public distribution system, and they have to spend a lot of money on that, which is also one of the another reason why it is affecting, the rise in price level is affecting on the public expenditure. So the next point is increase in population. As you all know that India is on second position in terms of population in the world. On the first position there is China with the population of 139 crore, and in our country the population of India is 135 crore. You can just imagine, if the population is this much, then obviously it requires a huge fund for the welfare of this much population. So it is becoming a reason for increase in the public expenditure. The growth in population obviously requires massive investment in health and education, law and order, and as a result, the government has to incur great expenditure to meet the requirement of increasing population. In fact, the public expenditure increases in the same ratio in which the population is increasing. Suppose, just understand this point. If the population is increasing, obviously the services should be increased at that number which the people are getting. And to increase the services, the government has to spend a lot of money on that. Especially for the health and education services, the government has to spend a lot of fund on that, and it is becoming a reason why the public expenditure is increasing in our country, because of the population, because of the increase in the population. It's a big number, 135 crore. Let's move to the next point. That is welfare state. For the welfare of the society, for the public, the government has to spend an increasing amount on items such as social insurance, unemployment relief, free medical aid, free education, etc., to improve the economic welfare of the country. Like you have heard about this unemployment relief. Those people which failed to find any job, the government is providing them some money for their necessity living. And you have to get this point, that by giving this much money to the unemployed persons, the government is facing a lot of problem of the increase in the public expenditure. Because as you know that if the if the government is spending on these issues, obviously it is not giving them any return. So with the increase in the population, there would be increase in the number of unemployed persons in the country. So obviously it will tend to increase the public expenditure in the country. Let's move to the next point. It is defense expenditure. The tremendous growth of public expenditure can be attributed to threat of war. It's basically the tremendous growth of population in the country is giving a threat of the war. No great war actually has been conducted in the second half of the 20th century, but threat of war have not been vanished. Still, for protecting the country, the government have to spend a lot of money on the defense department for protecting the public. Thus, for the safety of the country, the government is spending a huge amount of money on defense weapons. I mean, our country must be ready with the weapons. If any bad thing happens in the country, the government should be ready with that, and it's only possible if the huge amount is spent on the defense weapon. So it's also becoming one of the reasons why there is an increase in the public expenditure in our country. Let's move to the next point. Debt servicing. I mean, the government has been borrowing heavily both from internal and external sources. As a result, the government has to make a huge amount of repayment toward debt servicing. So basically, you have to understand here that the money which is spent by the government on these type of expenditure is actually they are getting their income from tax or non-tax receipt. You will learn in the next video. Actually, there is a huge gap between the public expenditure and the public income. The income which the government is receiving is very less than the expenditure which the government is incurring on the country. To meet this gap, the government have to take a loan from World Bank, from IMF, and this is increasing the problem for the government. Actually, they have to repay this. So they are continuously paying the interest on that debt. And obviously the rate of interest is increasing. So this is one of the another reason why the public expenditure is increasing in our country. So the next point here is government subsidies. The government of India has been providing subsidies on a number of items such as food, fertilizer, interest on priority sectors, lending, exports, education, etc. I mean, this all subsidies is provided by the government just for the social welfare. And because of this, the massive amount of subsidies, the public expenditure has increased many times, many-fold. The subsidies which is given to the farmers, the subsidies which we are getting, the subsidies which is given to the priority sectors, everything is covered under the public expenditure. How can we think that government will need this type of subsidies? Obviously, this will increase the public expenditure. For that reason, the government have to take the public debt. They have to take the loan from various international financial institutions to meet this expenditure. So this is putting a lot of pressure on the government as well to meet this expenditure. So that's all for the reasons. Now we will move to the next point, that is public revenue. We just now understand about the public expenditure. Now you will come to know what is public revenue. So public revenue is one of the branch of public finance. Actually, it deals with the various sources from which the state might drive its income. The government drive its income. These sources include income from tax receipt, non-tax receipt, and from government corporation. This received income by the government is actually used for the country, for the public expenditure, for the society welfare. So in short, whatever the income is received by the government covered under this public revenue, it includes tax receipt and non-tax receipt. Now have a look on the definition. Of public revenue by Dalton. However, the term public income has two senses, wide and narrow. In its wider sense, it includes all the income or receipt which a public authority may secure during any period. In its narrow sense, however, it includes only those sources of income of the public authority which are ordinarily known as revenue resources. To avoid ambiguity, thus the former is termed as public receipt and the latter public revenue. You just understand that the income which is earned by the government is known as public revenue. In the next video, you will come to know what are the basic resources, what are the basic sources through which the government is getting the revenue. So for now, that's all for today's video. Now it's time for you people to look after the assignment questions. So here are the assignment questions. The first one is, what is public expenditure? Explain the classification of public expenditure. The second one is, explain the reasons for increase in the public expenditure in India. What is public revenue? And you can also give the definition here. So I hope you have understood the concept very clearly in the simple words. Give your best in the assignment question. Try to find a lot of points from the internet also and learn a lot of things from this video. So from my side, that's all for today's video. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum students. Take care.